An oceanographer asks, where is the water going and how is it getting there? Okay? And that in particular is the focus of this project.
How's the ride?
Yep.
So they would throw them into the water, go back home, and the next morning they could look on the web page and see where these 4 drifters are that they had just thrown into the water.
See this little ball in here? Those things get bounced around in some pretty big waves, even out in Quinhagak Bay. And in the winter, when they get out in the Bering Sea here, those things really lead a tough life. So they're pretty well made.
Over the course of 2 field seasons, we had residents of Quinhagak and students from the school system. Quinhagak is a small village on the eastern shore of Quinhagak Bay, go out and deploy satellite track drifters in clusters of 4 drifters at a time. And they did this every couple of weeks between June and September.
And when we launched them, these automatically snap out by themselves. We did this in the classroom in the spring on this dummy one, but these are wrapped alongside in this coffin, and when they get in the water there and that coffin goes away, it releases the pressure, and these go popping up and launch themselves in that position.
An important area of the Bering Sea that I think has been overlooked is the nearshore Bering Sea. That region from the coast out to about 60 feet depth with a 20-meter isobath.
An isobath is a line of constant depth, and these typically extend from the southeast towards the northwest across the Bering Sea shelf.
This is where all the fresh water, all the river runoff is first entering the ocean in the Bering Sea side. And there's lots of different rivers that are entering. All the ones around Bristol Bay. Kuskokwim's a major river that's emptying into the Bering Sea shelf. And the Yukon's also a major feed. And in particular, those rivers are important habitats for salmon. And the out-migrating juvenile salmon are all coming down those rivers and eventually entering into the Bering Sea shelf.
Half of our nation's ocean-caught seafood comes from the Bering Sea. The Bering Sea is the home to one of the world's largest fisheries, the pollock fishery, and there's a thriving ecosystem in addition to the huge amount of biomass that's pulled out from pollock alone. There's salmon fisheries, there's subsistence fisheries, there's crab fisheries. So we're interested in the physics behind what drives these productive ecosystems because they're economically important.
Most of the time oceanographers go out in relatively large vessels and they can't get inshore. So from a logistics point of view, it's just a difficult place to access.
So there's a big gap of knowledge in that region.
Since we get the data back via satellite almost immediately, we can then display it on the internet, and anyone that's interested, scientists, local folks, researchers in Washington, D.C., school kids in Florida, they can look at that and say, wow, we're understanding something about how the ocean works in this corner of the world.
How long to the first disintegration?
We went into the drifter study thinking naively, as we often do as scientists, that our theories would explain well what these drifters should do. And the theoretical underpinnings that we had told us that fresh water that's discharged from rivers likes to keep the coast on the right-hand side. And so when the river water reaches the ocean, it wants to flow along shore, and in our case towards the north, towards Bering Strait. We're seeing the effect of tides, which are these little tiny loop-de-loops that the drifters all do together that gives them the impression that they're dancing. Because the tides are so regular, and then the greater drift towards the west is due to the winds. And there's a little blue dotted line, and that represented a frontal system between the fresh water near shore and the saltier water offshore. And our idea is that the drifters were all held close to shore by this front through the summer months when the winds are weak. But when the winds started to blow more strongly in the fall, that front was broken down, the waters got mixed across it, and the drifters started moving west across the shelf. It's our signal that the fresh water was also moving west across the shelf. That has a lot of implications for the nutrients the plankton and the fresh water. And the fate of the fresh water and these nutrients, whether or not they head north into the Arctic or make it towards the Bering Sea Basin, is important for the ecosystem and the climate.